Well, I am going to resist the political temptation because politics is contentious, and politics is temporary, and I want us to focus on the timeless lessons. Okay.
But it was a land. It was a right. It was a negotiated.
Go and visit?
Yeah, under heavy security. Yes.
Heavy security.
Right.
I've been there.
So
I've been there too.
and
I
not.
don't know if it's still
Yeah.
Accessible, yeah.
Now, to continue, we're talking, and another thing about Abraham is two concerns I mentioned last night in the board meeting. At the end of his life, are the land of Israel and his son continuing the Jewish legacy. So we see that Abraham's concern is our concern. We are concerned for the state of Israel, and we are concerned about Jewish intergenerational continuity for children, grandchildren. Abraham's concern are our concerns. Interesting, right?
doesn't change.
What? Right, exactly.
Doesn't change.
Now, verse 10. And Ephron, this mover and shaker of the Hittites, is sitting in the midst of the Hittites. Vayan Ephron Hitti et Avraham, and he answers him in front of all the Hittites, everybody there, and says, 11, Lo Adoni, no sir, Shma'eni Hasadeh. Listen to me. Hasadeh natati lach. I'm going to give you the field. Come on. Ve'amara asher bo lecha netatiya. And I'm going to give you the cave. It's a freebie. Le'enei vnei ami. Everybody here's a witness. All my locals. Netatiya lach kvo metecha. Please, it's yours. Tfaddal. Please. Have it. 12. Vayishtachu Avraham lifnei am haaretz. The cultural theater continues. Abraham gives that polite bow. Okay? Verse 13. Vayidaber el Ephron beoznei am haaretz emo. Abraham responds, saying, Ach im ata lu shma'eni. Please, I beseech you, if you only hear me out, if you only listen, Natati kesef hasadeh kach mimeni. I want to give you money for the field. Take it. Teneh. Take it. Ve'ekbera et meti shama. I beseech you, take the money. Now, this gets amusing. Verse 14. Vayan Ephron et Avraham le'emor lo. Ephron responds to Avraham saying, Adoni, my master, shma'eni. Hear me out. Eretz. 400 shekel kesef beni uvincha mahi. What's 400 shekel silver between you and me? He's giving him an inflated price.
Yeah.
But what's that between friends? You gotta love it, right? Mahi. Ve'et metecha kvo. And then, bury your deceased. Right? What are we? 16. Vayishma Avraham el Ephron, and Abraham heard Ephron, and he weighed the amount of money that was stated, 400 shekel over la socher. It means that it was a universal currency that you could trade with later.
Negotiable.
Right.
Like silver or something.
Right.
Bar of silver.
Very good, yes.
Bitcoins.
Verse 18. Yeah, very good. Vayakom sde Ephron asher b'machpelah. And Ephron rose from the cave, and we'll skip a little in the interest of time. 19, verse 19, and Abram buried Sarah his wife in Hebron in the land of Canaan. Let's go to verse 1. Chapter 24, verse 1. Just a few verses ahead. And Abram was exceedingly old. Avraham zaken. Ba bayamim. Ba bayamim I'm interested in how they translated it. Let's see how Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan translated Baba Yamim. It says well advanced in years, but actually Baba Yamim means he came into his days. Avraham Baba Yamim, and Abraham was old, and he was Baba Yamim. He was coming into his days. What does it mean? He was coming into his days. It means that he got up every day like a lion and ran to shul. That's what it means. It means that Abraham was a student of Albert Lanciano. Albert is 88 and 6 days, or 4 days. God bless him, to 120. And Abraham and Albert wakes up at 5:30 a.m. our Shamash to open the synagogue, and he prays Tehillim for an hour until people come for the service.
Who does that?
Albert Lanciano.
The Italian guy?
The Shamas.
Our Shamash, Albert, who lives here, yeah.
Oh.
So,
He's Egyptian.
So, of Italian descent.
Really?
That's why he's called Lanciano. His parents are Italian. Forget about it. You don't want to mess with him. Forget about it. So Abraham had full days. There was a great Orthodox Jew who was a philosopher and had 5 PhDs in the sciences in Israel. His name was Yeshayahu Leibovich. I wrote half a book about him. And one of my Bible professors in rabbinical school at the Jewish Theological Seminary told me that he once drove him to a meeting. And he said that he was stunned. They got out of the car and Leibovich started walking really fast. Like, you know those competitions in the Olympics of fast walking? That's how he was walking. So what it means is that Abraham lived with a lot of passion and diligence and alacrity. He did everything. He got up in the morning and he swallowed life. High Arnesty, who was 94, he gets up, God bless him, also to 180. He gets up every morning and he does, I think, about 15 minutes on the treadmill, and then he told me he does push-ups on the treadmill. Okay? And then sometimes he comes here, he does what he needs to do here. So
you know what he told me?
What?
At Fairfax High School, he holds
Champion.
the
I know.
record.
Yeah, I know.
For what?
For rope climbing.
Rope.
All right.
Fastest.
So the point is that the interpretation is that not only Abraham reached an advanced age, he was also a very active person who had full days. He had full days. So, for example, when the Torah says in the Ten Commandments, honor your father and your mother so that your days will be prolonged, it's not necessarily a guarantee to live a super long life. It's a guarantee that people who keep certain standards, certain behavioral, moral, ethical, spiritual standards, are going to have full rich days, right? And that's the blessing of being a spiritual person. You're always on a mission. You always have something to do. There's research. There was a cover of Time magazine a few years ago that people who frequently attend a house of worship, people like us, live on average 6 or 7 years longer than other people, because they have structure, even when they are retired. They have spiritual nourishment from the prayers. We have social nourishment from one another. We have intellectual nourishment from how we learn. We have emotional nourishment from our friendships. So, food for thought. Okay? And verse 1, Ve'Hashem berach et Avraham bakol. And Hashem blessed Abraham with everything. What does it mean? That he had material abundance, he had spiritual abundance. Now it's really interesting. Some commentators said that bakol, it means that he had a son and not a daughter, because had he had a daughter, he would have had to marry her to one of the idolaters, and that would have been complicated. Another commentator says that Abraham actually had a daughter, and her name was Kol, bakol, with everything. Another interesting view is that Abraham was I heard a sermon about this from Rabbi Wolpe a few years ago, that Abraham, by the way, this is a verse that some people say at the end of the Hallel, the special prayer for Rosh Chodesh, a new Jewish month. God blessed Abraham with everything. What does this mean with everything? Abraham had a full life, like the French singer Edith Piaf in her song Non rien de rien, je ne regrette rien, ni la mal qu'on m'a fait, ni le bien, tout ça fait bien égal. I regret nothing, not the bad things, not the good things, everything I can. Exactly. But here the idea is that Abraham had a full life. He had heartaches, he had even tragedies, he had difficulties. He also had moments of glory and supreme satisfaction and joy. He had a full life in all its manifold colors, right? And here,
What were all those things that you listed before about the nourishment that was really good that you said a minute ago?
Oh, so being part of a synagogue, of the community, gives us social nourishment, emotional nourishment, spiritual nourishment. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay. And the next part of the parsha is, and I'm going to kind of narrate this scene in my own words in the interest of time, that Abraham calls his chief butler Eliezer, and he tells him, I want you to take an oath and promise me that because I couldn't find a wife for Yitzchak on JDate or on Tinder, I don't want Yitzchak marrying a Canaanite woman. These girls just spent all days in the mall. I'm not crazy about that. I want you to go back to where I came from, to Aram Naharaim, and I want you to make sure that Yitzchak doesn't move there. I want him to stay in Israel, but I want you to find him a woman from my relatives in the old country from which I originate. That's what I want you to do. And then Eliezer asks him, what if I don't find a girl there who is suitable to be married to spiritual aristocracy, to Abraham's daughter? He says, in that case, you come back here. But no way, Jose, that my son is going to leave Israel and move there. By the way, Yitzchak was the only one of the three patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who remained in Israel all his life. He never went abroad, not even a weekend in Paris, nothing, because he was so purified by having been brought up in the binding of Isaac that he was not allowed to go elsewhere. Abraham traveled to Egypt, to Gar. Jacob immigrated to Aram Naharaim to work for Lavan when he escaped his brother. Later on, he moved to Egypt.
So Isaac never traveled?
Isaac only in Israel. He only stayed in Israel. Okay? And then we have the narration of what happens. The butler, Eliezer, he takes 10 camels and all the goodies of his master, and he goes to Aram Naharaim, to the city where Abraham's brother Nahor used to live, one of Abraham's brother. And he comes there, and he comes there with all his camels. He has 10 camels, and he has 10 men with him, and he has a deed showing how much Abraham is worth. It's kind of like, when I wanted to go to graduate school in America, I had to provide a letter from a bank that either me or my parents or my grandparents have X amount of dollars in the account, which shows that I can pay the tuition and living expenses for at least 1 year of school. Right? So that's kind of like what Abraham armed his servant with, a deed that attested to his wealth. Right? And in addition to that, the servant took with him jewelry. He went to Harry Winston, and he brought very expensive diamonds and jewelry and things like that. And then the servant said, here's the kind of girl that I want. I am going to see if there's going to... He waited for the time, there was a time when the women would come and draw water from the wells. Okay? And he said, I'm going to wait for that time. And I want to see if there is a young woman I will ask her for water. And I'm going to see if she's going to give water not only to me, because I'm advanced in age, but also to the 10 other guys with me, and to the camels. And that's the kind of person I'm looking for. And who will maybe even invite me to her home to eat. Because Abram had a PhD in hospitality. So it would only make sense that he should have a daughter-in-law who also has a PhD in hospitality. And that's how it was. And Rebecca came and she did that, and she gave him and the camels to drink. And he told her who he is, and she told him that she is the granddaughter of Nahor, of Abraham's brother. Yeah.
Isn't that a little close?
Well, she was Isaac's cousin.
First cousin?
Yeah. In our community, as we speak, we have people who are married who are cousins. You know that?
First cousin?
100. It depends. It's different.
Wow.
Yeah. It's less frequent now. But yeah. Not always. There are people here in our community that you and I know whose parents were cousins. No.
She just said her parents were first cousins.
There you go. It's not as common, but back then it was super common.
Yeah.
Okay? So he gives her a necklace, and he gives her earrings, nose rings even, She was a hipster, and Lavan, her brother, is very materialistic, and he just wants the money. And they invite him, and they said eat, and he says, I'm not going to eat until I tell you what I'm here for. And they said, well, we have to ask Rebecca if she agrees, if she wants to marry this guy. And this is the rabbinic proof text that you can never, ever, God forbid, in Judaism, marry a man or a woman against their volition, against their will. If you hear about the news in other cultures that this woman was forced to marry this guy, can never happen in Judaism, Baruch Hashem.
So they never had...
Never, ever.
They never had prearranged marriages, or what do you call it?
Prearranged, yes, but the girl has to agree. A big difference.
You marry this guy, okay.
Or not.
I don't think there was such thing as or not.
Now that we don't know if Rebecca...
I'm telling you the halacha. The halacha is that nobody can be married against their will.
So Rebecca and Laban and their family, we don't know if they were into one god or idols or pagan.
No, they were idolaters, and there's actually a verse here that says that Lavan says to Eliezer the butler, "Come in. Why are you standing outside? Va'anochi piniti habayit." And I vacated the home, and I made room for the camels. So Rashi says, what does it mean I vacated the home? It's not that he moved the furniture. He took all the statues out. Because he knew that Eliezer will not sit in a house of idolaters and eat facing those statues and things like that.
Does it say Eliezer somewhere in here?
No, it's Midrash.
I'm looking for Eliezer.
No, you won't find it. It says Abraham's servant.
Oh, okay.
And the commentators tell us that it's Eliezer, who was Abraham's chief butler, who was mentioned in an earlier Torah portion. And after that, they say, well, maybe Rebecca wants to stay here a few months, maybe 10 months. And Eliezer starts getting nervous, and finally she says, I'm ready to go now. So Rebecca leaves with Eliezer and with his entourage on the camels, and she gets, when they get closer to Abraham and his family, the servant, Eliezer, according to the Midrash, tells Rebecca, you see that guy over there? praying, it says that Yitzchak went out lasuach basadeh, which can also mean to meditate in the field. And then she saw him, and Rashi said that she was struck by the spiritual intensity and beauty of his visage, of his face, and she fell off the camel, or she glided off the camel, according to Rashi. The Torah itself says she kind of fell off the camel. Love at first sight. And then she covered herself with like a scarf out of modesty. Also an interesting piece of cultural history that even back then women used to cover themselves in certain social and cultural situations. And it says that she came in, they got married, she moved in with him into his tent, and it says that then Yitzchak was comforted from the passing of his mother. At the end of the parsha, and with this we'll conclude, it says that Abraham remarried.
Right.
And he married a woman called Keturah, whom Rashi tells us was actually Hagar. And she gave birth to 6 other sons.
My God.
And these sons were given by Abram monetary gifts. He took care of them. He bought them condos, and he gave them jobs in various businesses. Yeah, they were in Wilshire Tower, in one of the towers, with all the amendments and the amenities.
Rabbi,
But if I could just, I'll just finish the point. I'm sorry. And then, but only Yitzchak received the spiritual legacy. Okay, everybody got an inheritance, and a handsome one at that. Yitzchak was the one who was given the spiritual legacy to spearhead. Okay, and I'll just conclude by saying that, and then I'll answer your question. Forgive me. I just want to wrap the parsha.
Okay.
It'll take me
No problem.
90 seconds.
No problem.
Thank you.
Down so you don't forget.
Thank you for bearing with me. And it says that Abram lived to be 175. He also died satiated in old age, and Yitzchak and Ishmael buried him together in the cave that he bought. According to the Midrash, Adam and Eve were also buried there. Later, Yitzchak and Rebekah, Isaac and Rebekah were also buried there, and Yaakov and Leah. But Rachel was not. Rachel died at childbirth close to Bethlehem. She was buried somewhere else. And then it gives us the genealogy of the descendants of Ishmael, who passed away at 137. And Rashi tells us that Ishmael became a great guy towards the end of his life. He recognized that Yitzchak was the one who was cut out to be the spiritual leader. And that's that. Please.
So, isn't Hagar, is that how you pronounce it?
In English, yeah.
Yeah, Hagar. The woman's servant who Abraham threw out?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you remember why he threw her out? He didn't.
Because of Sarah.
And he didn't want to throw her out.
Right.
And
So
and
now-
Hashem told him, you listen to what your wife says.
So now she comes back into
Yeah.
his life?
Yeah,
Wow.
like a soap opera, right?
Okay.
Who's Ishmael? Is he?
Ishmael.
Ishmael is Abraham's son from Hagar, from the Egyptian maidservant.
His first son.
And the other 6 sons, what nation is that? Because we know the nation of Ishmael.
They are descendants of
Syria. Egypt.
descendants of Ishmael, and
They're not descendants of Ishmael.
no,
they're descendants
not
of-
these. These are. Rashi says that they were the head of nations, and
They lived in Assyria.
He
and
sent them.
Egypt.
He sent
Yeah.
the sons away while he was still alive.
they are the head of nations of some ancient peoples that are no longer around. They were patriarchs of their own rights and founders of different groups in antiquity, according to the Torah narrative.
So he-
Okay?
Rabbi. Do you really believe that at 150 or whatever age he had children?
So two things.
It was a different.
One is by way of religious apologetic. We don't know what years meant then. This is not the Gregorian calendar of January to December, and this is not the Jewish calendar from Tishrei to Elul. That's one thing. Secondly, the Torah's narrative is an external garment, the story. But the mystical, spiritual meaning, or the Kabbalistic meaning, is called in Aramaic beautifully Nishmata Deoraita. The soul of the Torah is really those superb, timeless spiritual insights that we're excavating and discussing together. So, that's really the point. That's really, I think, the point of it. That's how Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, to whom our tradition ascribes the authorship of the book of Zohar, the leading work of the Kabbalah, he says, "Woe to he who thinks the Torah is telling us mere stories." The stories, some look at them as literature, some as historical or quasi-historical reportage. But really what we're doing is that we're looking at it from a spiritual perspective, right? But I understand what you're saying. We can conclude by saying, it alludes to something Mr. Jeb Levy said last night in the board meeting, is that we see that it says that Yitzchak went out to meditate in the field, and it was in the afternoon when Rebecca saw him and thought he was so handsome and holy, she fell off or glided off the camel, that according to our sages, he instituted mincha, the afternoon meditation, the afternoon service. And Abraham instituted the morning service, because many times it says that Abraham arose early in the morning to do mitzvot. And Yaakov instituted Arvit, the evening service, because it says that when he ran for his life, he stumbled into a certain place. He stopped for gas, he saw this motel, and it says, Vayifga b'makom, and he stumbled into this place. But makom, place in Hebrew, also means it's one of God's name, the omnipresent, who is everywhere. So there are two perspectives in the Talmud. One is that our 3 daily prayers come to alleviate, to substitute the daily offerings from temple times. The other is that the prayers were instituted by the patriarchs, Abraham morning, Isaac afternoon, Jacob evening. And lastly, I learned from Rabbi Sachs that these 3 prayers represent the 3 facets of what it means to have a true Jewish community. Abraham rose up early in the morning out of spiritual desire and longing to connect to Hashem. Put on tefillin, prayed. So Abraham represents the spiritual fulfillment that we seek through Torah learning and prayer in a Jewish community. Yitzchak, it says, lasuach basadeh, to meditate in the field. It also means to converse. So that's the social aspect of being part of a community. A chavurah, the camaraderie, the friendship. Just joking and talking about what's going on at the Kiddush. And thirdly, the last component, Yaakov, he instituted the evening service at the dead of night, when he was scared, alone, depressed, and running for his life, without his family. And that's the aspect of community that, as Isaiah says, Ish et reu ya'azoru le'achiv yomar chazak, that each one of us will help each other, and we strengthen and empower and embrace each other to together meet and tackle life's challenges and sorrows. So these 3 prayers of Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov also represents these 3 facets of what it means to be a Jewish community. So may we continue to grow as individuals and friends in a community. And if you want, we still have availability. Thank you everyone for attending.